Snow lashed across the mountain road as the Millionaire CEO hit the brakes. Through the swirl of white, he saw her, a tiny girl, hunched on a bench. Her hair frozen to her cheeks, her lips trembling with each shallow breath. He ran toward her coat flaring in the wind. "My chest. It hurts when I breathe," she whispered, eyes glassy with pain. As he lifted her into his arms, something inside him cracked open. He didn't know it yet, but that moment would change everything. If you want to know what happens next, stay with me until the end of the video. And if you still believe deep in your heart that God is always watching over you silently, arranging everything, then right now, leave a comment saying Amen below this video. Because who knows, at the very moment you write those words, a blessing may quietly enter your life. Snow fell like slow-burning ash over the Montana wilderness, soft and endless. The kind that silences everything, even your thoughts. From the wide windows of his Range Rover, Quinn watched the flakes dance in the headlights before vanishing into the dark. The dashboard clock blinked a little past 9. The road to his cabin wound through pines heavy with frost, their branches bending like tired arms. It had been 3 years since his wife and little girl died in that car accident on Highway 93, and yet winter hadn't left him since. Not really. It had only changed its shape, moved inside him, settled behind his ribs. People in Whitefish still whispered about him, the tech millionaire who built an empire in Seattle before disappearing into the mountains. They imagined he was meditating, healing, writing a book. None of that was true. He was simply existing quietly, efficiently, like a machine still running long after the operator was gone. The heater hummed low, and the windshield wipers kept their slow rhythm when something a shape flickered in the corner of his vision. A bench by the trailhead, a smear of colour that didn't belong in all that white. At first he thought it was a coat someone left behind, but then the shape moved. Asher slowed the car, his pulse spiking in that sudden old way, the way it used to when alarms blared in the data center, or when his daughter had trouble breathing in the middle of the night. He pulled over gravel, crunching under the tires, and stepped out into the cold. The air bit through his wool coat immediately. The bench was half buried under snow, and on it sat a child, small soaked through hair tangled and stiff with frost. She was hunched forward, arms wrapped around herself, whispering something he couldn't hear. "Hey," he called out, voice sharp from shock. "Hey, are you okay?" No answer. Only the thin whistle of the wind. He knelt beside her, brushing snow from her shoulder. The girl flinched, her face pale and lips blue. "Sweetheart," he said, softer now, instinct taking over. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, brown and glassy. "My chest. It hurts when I breathe." She rasped, barely a whisper. The words hit him like a blade. For a second, he wasn't on that mountain road anymore. He was in a hospital room 3 years ago, holding another tiny hand growing cold in his. "Stay with me," he murmured, wrapping his coat around her trembling body. "I've got you." He lifted her carefully, so light it scared him, and carried her toward the car. The storm swallowed their footprints as he drove through the snow headlights, slicing the darkness. For the first time in years, Quinn felt something break open inside him, something he thought had frozen forever. The snowstorm thickened as Asher sped through the mountain road, his headlights fighting a losing battle against the curtain of white. The girl Clara, he would later learn her name, lay slumped in the passenger seat, wrapped in his wool coat. Each breath she took sounded like sandpaper against glass. He turned the heat up, one hand gripping the wheel, the other reaching over every few seconds just to feel if she was still warm. The Whitefish Regional Clinic was the only place open this far north after dark. He remembered seeing its sign once while passing through town, a modest building near the gas station, more grey than white like everything else in winter. By the time he skidded into the parking lot, the storm had nearly erased the road behind him. He didn't even shut the car door as he ran inside, the girl pressed against his chest. "Help!" His voice cracked through the quiet lobby. A nurse looked up startled. Within seconds, 2 others appeared rolling a gurney. "What happened?" one asked, already checking the child's pulse. "I found her on the side of the road," Asher said, breathless. "She's freezing and she can't breathe." They moved fast. Oxygen mask, warm, blankets, monitors. A woman in navy scrubs entered the room, calm and focused. Her hair was tied back in a braid, streaked with silver. "I'm Dr. Nora Vale," she said, not looking up from her work. "Let's get her temp BP and a chest x-ray." "What's her name?" "I don't know," Asher admitted. "She couldn't tell me." Dr. Vale nodded slightly. "Okay, you did the right thing bringing her in." Asher stepped back, soaked and trembling, watching the small figure swallowed by medical hands and machines. He'd walked into that clinic a ghost. Now his chest burned like someone had struck a match inside it. When the flurry of motion finally slowed, Dr. Vale pulled off her gloves and turned toward him. "She's stable for now," she said quietly. "Severe hypothermia, probable pneumonia. The lungs sound tight, maybe fluid buildup. We'll know more once the scan comes back." Asher nodded, trying to catch his breath. "Will she make it, doctor?" Vale hesitated, the kind of pause doctors use when they don't want to promise too much. "She's young. That helps. But she's been out there too long." He looked at the small form beneath the blankets, the steady rhythm of the monitor beside her bed. Her hand twitched, fingers curling weakly in the air, searching for something. Without thinking, Asher stepped forward and offered his. The tiny hand found his coat sleeve clinging to it. "Don't leave," she whispered through the mask so faint he thought he'd imagined it. "I won't," he said. And for the first time in years, he meant every word. Hours passed. The waiting room emptied, replaced by the soft hum of heaters and the smell of antiseptic. Asher sat motionless, his wet coat folded beside him. Nurses came and went, asking if he was family. He kept answering, "Not yet." Near midnight, Dr. Vale returned, holding a clipboard. Her tone was calm, but her eyes told a different story. "We found something unusual," she began. "Her lungs show inflammation, not just from pneumonia. There are signs of chemical irritation, long-term exposure. It's not common in kids her age." Asher frowned. "What kind of chemical?" "We don't know yet. Could be industrial. I've already ordered a toxin panel. You said you found her on the trail near the Glacier Creek trailhead," he replied. "There's nothing out there but forest," and he stopped mid-sentence, remembering the old factory sign he'd noticed weeks ago, North Star paper coating. Dr. Vale studied his face. "You thought of something." He hesitated, then shook his head. "Just a place. Probably nothing." She didn't push, only handed him a paper cup of coffee. "If she wakes up, she'll need a familiar face. Stay close." Asher watched her leave the door, closing softly behind her. The clinic was quiet again. Outside, the snow kept falling, relentless, pure, indifferent. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, staring at the girl through the small window in the ER door. The monitor beeped steadily, a fragile promise in the dark. Somewhere deep inside, something old began to thaw, not just the cold in his hands, but the years of silence wrapped around his heart. By morning, the storm had quieted. Pale light spilled through the hospital windows, turning everything the colour of cold milk. Asher Quinn hadn't slept. He sat in the same chair all night, watching the tiny rise and fall of the girl's chest. When a nurse came to change the IV, Asher stood stretching stiff limbs. Did she say anything, he asked. Not yet, the nurse replied. But she'll pull through. Kids are tougher than we think. Dr. Vale entered a few minutes later, a folder tucked beneath her arm. The test results came back, she said. We found traces of heavy metals, mercury, arsenic, and chlorine derivatives. Definitely not environmental. It's industrial contamination. Asher blinked. Industrial. From where she hesitated. We don't know. But whatever she's been exposed to, it's been in her system for a while. A silence settled between them. Asher's mind replayed the night before the bench, the frozen road, her tiny voice whispering, "It hurts when I breathe." Then Dr. Vale handed him a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a crumpled piece of paper pulled from the child's jacket pocket. A child's drawing 3 stick figures, a river, and a red house drawn beside it. Over the blue water in shaky handwriting were the words, "Don't drink the water." Maybe she was trying to tell someone, the doctor murmured. Asher stared at the drawing. The handwriting was childish, but deliberate, a warning from someone who knew exactly what she'd seen. He folded the bag carefully and slipped it into his coat. "I'll be back," he said quietly. Outside, the snow crunched beneath his boots. His car engine groaned before coming alive. He drove toward the Glacier Creek area, guided only by instinct and memory. The road narrowed into a dirt path lined with rusted mailboxes and sagging trailers. A faded sign read, "Juniper Flats Mobile Park." He parked, stepping out into the brittle air. The place was silent, too silent. Doors hung crooked curtains drawn tight. He walked toward one trailer where the steps were half buried in snow. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. Through the frost-covered window, he saw a small living space, cluttered but not abandoned blankets piled on the couch. A mug still half full, a picture frame lying face down. He pushed the door gently. It opened with a slow creak. The smell hit him first, mildew detergent and something metallic. Inside, he found a photograph, a woman with auburn hair holding a smiling little girl in front of a Christmas tree. Clara. Her cheeks round and bright. The woman Elena Hensley, he guessed, looked tired, but her smile was genuine. Beside the photo lay a notebook, water-stained and curled at the edges. He opened it carefully. Headaches again. Clara coughed all night. Boiled the water still smells like metal. Tried bottled but can't afford it anymore. Further down the page, one line was underlined 3 times. "It's the water. No one believes me." Asher exhaled slowly. The air felt heavier now, pressing against his chest. He flipped to the last entry dated 2 weeks ago. Meeting with North Star Paper. Told them about the creek. They said I should stop asking questions. A sound behind him made him freeze. A floorboard creaked. An old man stood in the doorway, wrapped in a flannel coat, his expression cautious but not hostile. "You're not from around here," the man said, voice gravelly. "No," Asher admitted. "I'm looking for this girl." He held up the photo. "Clara." The man nodded slowly. "Eleanor's kid. Haven't seen her mother in days. Folks say she ran off. I don't buy it. What happened?" The old man leaned against the door frame, lighting a cigarette. She was digging into the wrong kind of truth, the kind that don't like daylight. The match flared between them bright for a moment before fading back into grey. Asher felt the cold creep deeper into his bones, but it wasn't from the snow. It was something darker, the weight of a story that didn't want to be told. The old man introduced himself as Ira Beckett, a former maintenance worker at the North Star paper plant. His hands were rough, the kind that had known years of machines and cold mornings. "I warned her," Ira muttered, staring out toward the frozen creek beyond the trailers. "Told her to keep quiet, but she said kids were getting sick, coughing rashes, hair falling out. She wouldn't let it go." Asher followed his gaze. The creek twisted like a ribbon of glass through the snow, its surface filmed with a thin layer of ice. Even from here, he caught the faint metallic tang in the air. "What did they do to her?" he asked. Ira took a long drag of his cigarette. "Two men came around the day after she went to the factory. Black SUV. Haven't seen her since." Asher felt a pulse of anger he hadn't known in years. "Do you know who those men were?" "Don't have to. Around here, if a car like that shows up, it's North Star's doing. They've got the sheriff's office eating from their hand." Snow began to fall again, thin, sharp flakes swirling through the air. "Be careful, son," Ira said finally. "You stir ghosts like these, they don't just vanish." That night, back in his cabin, Asher laid the notebook out across his kitchen table. The handwriting trembled across the pages, desperate, frightened, but determined. He pored over every word until the ink blurred. At midnight, his phone buzzed. No caller ID, just a message: "Speak out and you'll lose everything. Stay quiet and she lives." Asher froze, the glow of the screen reflecting in his tired eyes. Outside, the storm moaned against the windows, but inside, the silence was louder. He turned the phone face down and stared at it for a long time. He could almost hear his late wife's voice, gentle but firm, reminding him how he used to fight for something bigger than himself. "You can't fix the world, Ash," she'd say, "but you can show up for one small corner of it." The next morning, he drove back to the clinic. Clara was awake, her cheeks still pale, but there was color now, life. She held a crayon in one hand, drawing quietly on the bed tray. He knocked softly. "Hey there," he said. She looked up, eyes wary but curious. "You came back. I said I would." She nodded, turning the page toward him. It was another drawing, 3 stick figures, a tall man, a small girl, and a woman lying beneath a tree, her hand reaching upward. Over the tree she'd written one shaky word: "Mum." Asher's throat tightened. "That's your mum." "She's sleeping," Clara whispered. "But she's not gone. I can still hear her when I draw." He didn't know what to say, only placed a gentle hand on the bed rail. "You're safe now. I'll find her." Later in the parking lot, he met Dr. Vale. She handed him a sealed envelope. "We ran a second toxin panel," she said. "Whatever's in her blood is the same chemical compound used in North Star's bleaching process." "This isn't coincidence, Asher." He exhaled slowly. "Can you prove it?" "I can't. Not without samples from the source. And that would require access." He nodded, eyes hardening. "Then I'll get them." "Doctors." Vale frowned. "You're not serious," but he was already walking away. That evening, under a bruised ski, Asher drove toward the edge of the industrial zone where the North Star plant loomed like a sleeping beast. Steam rose from its stacks, glowing faintly in the dark. He parked behind a line of pine trees, grabbed his flashlight, and slipped through the fence where snow had bent the wire low. The hum of machinery vibrated through the ground. Down by the creek, half hidden behind a tangle of pipes, he saw a rusted overflow valve dripping a faint, yellowish stream into the frozen water. He crouched, dipped a sterile bottle beneath the trickle, and sealed it tight. When he straightened, headlights flashed across the snow, brief but deliberate. Someone else was there. He ducked behind a barrel, heart hammering. A black SUV idled near the plant gate before slowly turning away. Asher stayed hidden until its taillights vanished. Then he whispered into the cold night, his breath a white ghost in the dark. "You can threaten me all you want," he said quietly, "but I'm done being silent." By dawn, the mountains had vanished behind a wall of snow. The storm had rolled back over Whitefish like a living thing howling through the pines, shaking the rooftops. Inside his cabin, Asher Quinn sat at his desk, the sample bottles lined up in a neat row beside his laptop. Every instinct told him to walk away, to let the world keep its silence. But each time he looked at the photo of Clara taped to the wall, he heard her voice again. "You came back." He uploaded the lab results Dr. Vale had confirmed at Dawn Proof that North Star's waste matched the toxins found in Clara's blood. Then he opened a blank email and attached the files. Recipients, local news outlets, the State Environmental Agency, and one national network. He hesitated a moment, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "You can't fix the world," his wife used to say. He smiled faintly. "Maybe not," he whispered, "but I can fix this." He hit send. 2 hours later, the town exploded. Reporters flooded the main street. Headlights flashed through falling snow as vans unloaded cameras and tripods. At the heart of the storm in front of the courthouse steps stood Asher, no suit, no PR team, just his dark coat dusted with snow. Dr. Vale and Maggie Rowan, the lawyer, stood beside him. "This isn't about me," he told the microphones, his breath visible in the freezing air. "It's about a 6-year-old girl who nearly died because a company decided profit mattered more than life." Questions fired from every direction. "Is it true you were once a North Star investor?" someone shouted. "Yes," he said. "And that's why I have to speak now. Silence makes you complicit." A hush fell over the crowd. Even the snow seemed to pause. Then he reached into his pocket and unfolded the small drawing Clara had made, the one that read, "Don't drink the water." "This," he said, holding it up, "is the first piece of evidence I found. Not in a boardroom, not in a lab, in a child's hand." Behind him, the courthouse doors opened. Sheriff Ben Caro stepped out, followed by 2 state investigators. Their faces were grim, their coats streaked with snow. "The EPA has issued an emergency order," one announced. "North Star paper plant is officially shut down pending federal investigation." Reporters shouted. Cameras clicked. And somewhere in the distance, church bells began to ring, faint, muffled by the wind. For a long moment, Asher just stood there, letting the snow fall over him. He had lost everything, his company, his privacy, his carefully built walls. And yet, for the first time in years, he felt lighter. That evening, he returned to the clinic. Clara was sitting up in bed, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, crayons scattered across the tray. She looked up as he entered. "You were on TV," she said, smiling. "You looked cold." He laughed softly, sitting beside her. It was snowing. She nodded, serious now. "Mom would be proud of you." The words hit deeper than any headline. He glanced toward the hallway where Dr. Vale waited with a quiet smile. "She might be closer than you think." the doctor said gently. The hospital 2 counties over just called. They've admitted a woman matching your mother's description. Clara's eyes widened. She's alive. Asher took her hand, squeezing gently. We'll go find out. Outside, the storm finally began to fade, leaving the streets wrapped in white silence. The town lights glowed through the fog, warm and distant, like a promise waiting to be kept. For the first time since the night he'd found her, Asher felt the winter breaking piece by piece. Spring crept into Whitefish, Montana, like a secret whispered through the trees. Snow still clung to the shaded corners of rooftops, but the rivers had begun to sing again, soft, steady, forgiving. The mountains no longer looked cruel. They simply stood watch, silent witnesses to a season learning how to breathe again. In a sunlit hospital room, Clara Hensley pressed her cheek against her mother's shoulder. Elena was awake now, her body thin, but her spirit stronger than anyone expected. Tubes and monitors surrounded her like the remnants of a storm that had finally passed. You came back, Eleanor whispered, tears slipping into her daughter's hair. Clara nodded. I told them you'd come back. He found you. She turned toward Asher Quinn, who stood by the window, a quiet figure in a dark coat. His eyes softened. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man out of place in his own life. Elena's hand reached for his. You saved my child. He shook his head slowly. No, he said. She saved me. The sunlight shifted across the floorboards, warm and gentle, like a benediction. Outside, the last snowflakes melted into tiny silver streams that trickled toward the valley. It felt like the whole world was thawing, and with it his heart. Weeks passed. The North Star paper plant was sealed by federal order. Its towering smokestacks, now nothing more than ghosts against the sky. News crews came and went chasing the story the press called the Winter Millionaire. But for Asher, the real story was quieter. He sold his remaining shares in QNet Systems and used the money to create the Still Waters Foundation, named for the very thing that had once nearly taken a child's life. Its mission was simple: to keep rural water clean and to teach small towns how to stand up when no one else would. The cabin that once echoed with emptiness now smelled of cinnamon and coffee. Eleanor worked from the kitchen table reviewing community grants. Clara drew pictures on every available surface, walls, napkins, even the back of Asher's mail. Every drawing had one thing in common: 3 figures holding hands. One evening, as dusk painted the pines in shades of gold and violet, Asher stepped outside with 2 mugs of tea. Eleanor joined him on the porch, wrapped in a flannel blanket. Do you ever think about the life you left behind? She asked quietly. He smiled faintly. All the time. I used to measure my worth in numbers, stock prices, assets, but none of that could buy a night like this. Eleanor followed his gaze toward the yard, where Clara was stacking tiny snowballs into the shape of a lopsided snowman. And now, she asked. Now I think wealth is simpler, he said. It's having someone to come home to. It's hearing laughter in a house that used to be silent. Eleanor reached for his hand, their fingers brushing like the first hint of spring wind through melting branches. The church bells of Whitefish began to ring in the distance, not a warning this time, but a hymn. Asher looked up at the softening sky and smiled. He'd spent half his life chasing success and the other half running from pain. But here, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and the quiet rhythm of love, he understood something he never had before. He was rich not in fortune, not in fame, but in everything that truly mattered. And for the first time since the snow first fell, the winter millionaire was finally home. Today's story comes to an end, but its echo still lingers in the heart. What do you think? Give us a score from 1 to 10 and feel free to share a few words in the comments. Every voice here is valued and heard. Before you go, let me ask you gently, are you doing okay today? If your heart feels heavy, let this place be a quiet corner where you can share and find comfort. See you again in the next bedtime story, where love and hope remind us that no matter how dark the night may seem, kindness will always prevail.